right, well, I am told it is 6 o'clock, so I'd like to call us to order. In accordance with South Carolina Code of Laws 1985, Section 30-4-80-E, the following have been notified of the time, place, and agenda of this meeting: the Herald, the Charlotte Observer, CN2, and WRHI. If I could ask you all to please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. We'll now stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. Board members, you've all received a copy of the agenda. Were there any adjustments or corrections?
No, ma'am.
All right, then that will stand. We do have several different types of things going on tonight. We're going to start with some special recognition, and then we've got some budget and some other items. So if you want to start with our special recognition that we've got.
Each year we get a special gift from the York Electric Co-op. I believe we're your biggest customer in Fort Mill at least, right, Mark? That's right. And we thought we'd honor them tonight by letting them present their, and talk a little bit about it. Mark Howie and Marcus. Marcus, I'm not going to try your last name.
Marquis, but I just call him Marcus.
Okay.
Mark and Marcus. Do I stand here?
Yep.
Yep, you can move that microphone up so
Probably
we
have
can
to
hear you.
Speak into there for the.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Mark, I know a lot of you folks here, several of you. For those I don't know, again, Mark Howie with York Electric Co-op. We certainly appreciate our relationship with Fort Mill. I think it probably goes back not to the original Riverview Elementary, but what I call the one I remember that my girls went to, or our girls went to, and it's been a great relationship. So just wanted to thank you all for that. We are not a perfect utility, but we try hard, and I can assure you if there's an issue, Dr. Epps can find us, and we certainly appreciate it. So we do have some money. We're not here to ask for anything. We're actually here to bring you some money. We don't have a complaint, so I hope y'all will appreciate that. But with that said, I'll let Marquis take the mic and tell you about the check we brought for us tonight.
Yeah, so like Mark said, my name is Marquis, Key Accounts representative at York Electric. And so we talked to Dr. Epps on an annual basis, and we presented the check to him this year, and we were going to present it to you guys as well, but he said he better get it to Leanne before he gets in trouble. And so it's been deposited, yeah. So we brought one, our little nifty thing. So this is what you got for 2023. It's a little bigger.
A little history here.
Yeah.
We usually get about 20 or 30,000. Y'all can speak to what it's based on, but
Right.
This is the biggest one we've received yet. I believe.
Yes.
Part of this is actually from the nuclear debacle, the settlement from that. So everybody got a little bit more back this year. Happy to say that we've returned about $2.5 million back to York Electric Co-op members. Also happy to say we've not had a rate increase in 10 years due to all the growth we've had and being able to manage that. So we're very proud of that as well. So.
And also, I was doing some data, and since 1993, you guys have gotten $443,000. A little bit more than that, but keep it at round numbers, yeah. So, yeah. Appreciate the partnership.
Thank you. Yeah.
Great relationship with York Co-op. Not putting Duke Power down. They're a great company too, but we really appreciate
We
what
bring
you
you
do.
money.
As long as we got the real one.
Right, put it in the mail for us.
Put more than 50-cent stamp on that one if you're gonna make
Yeah,
it.
right.
Our next certificate of recognition is from one of our state champion teams, Catawba Ridge High School boys baseball team. And I believe Coach is here. He's going to help me. I'll let you do some of the talking. Coach Stash, right? Stash. That's close.
All right, well,
Donna told me and I missed it up.
it's all right. I'm Stosh Brzezinski. I'm the head baseball coach at Catawba Ridge High School. Thank you for recognizing our guys and our team. We worked extremely hard this year. It's really hard to believe it's only been 4 years and we were able to accomplish that along with the softball team. I mean, I think it's a testament to the school board and the district's commitment to athletics and facilities. If you look, you guys have all seen Catawba Ridge. It is beautiful. You guys put everything in place that allow our athletes to be successful with the facilities and the weight room. And, there's a lot of future college athletes and maybe even a pro one out there. So, we just are very grateful for the support, and we're very happy to be here. And, we're still kind of riding the high of since it just happened. And, but most of our guys are here, and we just appreciate all the support.
Let's get out here and get my picture.
All right.
Bring those boys up. Come on.
So I'm curious how they let you keep your hair color.
Yeah.
I actually dyed my beard, and then we lost the game in the playoffs, and I quickly shaved it off. And
Okay.
It's already grown back.
All right. I was expecting blonde hair on everybody.
Right?
Right here.
All right.
Try to poke your head.
Try to be seen. If
There you
see
go.
the camera, that's good.
Nice job, y'all.
Congratulations, guys. What was the final score?
7-4.
Y'all had it the whole way, didn't you? For the public's benefit, we honor state and national winners here. We had 2 other state champion teams that couldn't make it, and we'll pick them up at another meeting. So,
Yeah, that's the downside of the spring sports when the school's already out and everybody's gone to the beach for the summer. So, okay. Our next agenda item is the public hearing.
You guys don't need to stay.
Yeah, y'all don't
You
have
got-
to stay.
You're welcome to, but don't feel obligated.
Can if you want to.
It'll be riveting from here on out.
earn your Boy Scout award.
Sorry, Ms. Spears. I didn't mean to cut you off.
All right. No, so like I said, this is the actual public hearing, and if you want to talk about that a little bit, we'll get to the action stuff in a minute, right?
Okay, absolutely. So this is the public hearing on the budget, and I'm going to go through some of the highlights. And a lot of this will be repeat of what you as board members have heard me say at the 2 previous May meetings. But this is also for the benefit of those watching, and then we will also post this online as required, the public hearing of the proposed budget for the 2023-2024 year. Let me make sure I'm going through the same data that you see. Tonight, the administration, we are pleased to present a proposed general fund budget for the upcoming year. This is for public review, and at the end, we will open the floor for any public comments as well. The state, let me just start by saying the state budget process is still ongoing, as we've all heard and read. In the House and Senate Conference Committee, they are continuing to meet this week. The last word we've received is that they hope to have a final state budget by the end of July, but it could take longer. If it does take longer and it goes past July 1, the state will operate under their continuing resolution that they've already passed. So we would continue to receive funding. It would just be based on the 22-23 budget instead of the new allocations until a final state budget is passed.
Would that mean, Leanne, that anything that we end up voting on in terms of changes, raises, things like that, for the employees that get paid in July, would
We would go ahead and move forward with the budget based on whatever you, as a local school board, pass, correct?
And then when they pass their budget, whatever adjustments, they would make up the difference or ask for a refund?
They would make up the difference. And the reason that we are comfortable with bringing this to you and recommending passage tonight is that we do not anticipate any significant changes. There are no significant education differences between the House and Senate. Their differences are on other state topics. So we feel pretty certain with what we've received as far as projections for next year for state funding. As you know, the state budget process, as well as our local process, begins in January. So it's a long haul from January to June. So we are happy to be here this evening to present this to the public. Once again, the state funding is not favorable for our district under the new education funding model. And this is really due to a couple areas. Primarily, it's the new proportionate share distribution concept. It's the increase in poverty weighting, with us being the lowest poverty district in the state. And it's the inclusion of the state charter schools now, where previously they were funded separately. They're now drawing from the large pot of money. And we all know we saw significant increases in the charter schools during COVID. And so they are now receiving a higher proportionate share of funding. What we're presenting tonight is based on the Senate version. This is important because the Senate version was updated for the 135-day membership enrollment counts. So we think this is the most accurate information going forward for the final budget. The overall state pot, as I mentioned, does not differ significantly between the House and Senate. So let's jump in. I wanted to reiterate, I had mentioned this previously in May, that the goals this year, of course, we want to recommend, and we need a balanced budget. We're not going to recommend any usage of our fund balance. Our goal, our number one goal, as we developed the budget this year and as we met with our principals and our department heads, was to focus on recruitment and retention of all staff areas. We want to stay competitive with the market. We think that is very critical with what we're seeing with teaching positions in South Carolina, nationally, but also just in all of our other staffing areas and what we're seeing as far as the competitiveness of the market in our area with job opportunities. So we want to recruit and retain those staff that we have. That was very important to us this year. We want to maintain reasonable class sizes, and I say reasonable because we've seen our class sizes slowly get a little larger, but we still want to keep them reasonable for our teachers. We think that's very important, and for the performance of our students and the help that they're able to receive from their teachers. We 100% have to be in compliance with state and federal regulations. And then we also have the situation this year with ESSER II funding that is going to expire in September. And so we have positions that we had to roll into this budget.
Lynn, I'm not sure I heard you say about the competitive piece. You may have mentioned that, but we're trying to maintain the #1 position in York County and in the top
Correct.
of the state.
Correct.
Correct.
All of our, under this plan, our goal was to be the top paying district in York County, as Dr. Epps mentioned, but also to maybe gain a little bit in the state because we had dropped to about number 7 in the state in teacher pay, and we're hoping to get back in the top 5 with this plan. And that was that is the reason why teacher pay was one of our highest priorities in this budget plan. So this plan would increase teacher pay by $3,300 for all teachers. Every cell on the teacher pay scale would be increased by that amount. That is a 7.5% cost of living increase. So we're very excited to be able to offer teachers a 7.5% cost of living increase. It's a 5% increase for all of our other staff, all of our other pay scales. And that is in accordance with what the state budget proposal, which we feel like that is not under discussion. It will pass a 5% increase for state agency employees for next year. In addition, all employees that are eligible would receive a step increase. That's normally about 1.5 to 2%. It also includes 25.5 new teachers for growth for next year. And a new item, it includes coverage for the required 30 minutes of unencumbered teacher time during lunch so that teachers would be completely free of any supervision responsibility. We have partnered with Leroy Springs with the flyer staff to have extra help coming in during those lunch hours to provide our teachers with that free time or unencumbered time.
And that change is specific to elementary schools. The requirement for the 30 minutes is consistent for all grades, but it's handled otherwise in middle and high school.
Correct, correct. We've also included in this plan, at the request of all of our principals, to increase their school extracurricular stipend allocations. They have a lot of teachers doing some great work with students after school, such as clubs and other activities. And they all requested consideration in increasing the stipend allocations for next year. You'll also see our normal increases for some overhead costs in the technology and maintenance areas. And then I'm going to highlight a couple things still, just the impact that we're still seeing. We're rolling into year 2 of the new education funding formula. The new formula, as I mentioned, it is not favorable for a district like Fort Mill. It replaces the old EFA, or Education Finance Act. It is based on a statewide average student-teacher ratio versus an amount per pupil. It is based on a state pot of funding that gets distributed to districts based on their weighted pupil units. The state likes to say we have more flexibility to spend the funds at the local level, but what we really hope in the future, we will continue to advocate for some changes in this for districts like ours, specifically a low poverty, high growth district. We feel like we enjoy the flexibility, but we don't feel like that is as critical. We can manage fine with the various pots, but the state feels like this is a benefit to us, more flexibility. And then there's increased accountability, which we were already doing. Requirements for publishing your budget on the website. You have to use an approved auditor, which we have always done that. And then the Revenue and Fiscal Affairs Office will create additional data for the public. So those are just a few continued highlights about the new funding formula as we roll into year 2. This is a chart showing our budget history and projections. I think what's most important here is looking at, we are projecting student enrollment next year at 18,696 students. This is based on projections that Dr. Holden performed for us by school, by grade level. This would increase our amount per student spend to $11,578, and it's roughly 3.9% growth over our current year 135-day average daily membership. We use average daily membership because that's what funding is based on, what the weightings are based on. So you can see that proportionately our budget has continued to increase, but it is in direct correlation with our student average daily membership increase over the last 5 years. This is a chart showing our assessed value history. You can see that for tax year 2022, this is this past October when tax bills go out, our assessed value was $621,862,000. I can tell you that number's already changed. It changes daily, depending on what is coming onto the tax roll at the county level. You will see a pretty significant increase in 2021, and I just wanted to point out as a reminder, that was tax reassessment year for York County. That's why we had such a jump between 2020 and 2021. But over the 10-year period, our assessed growth, we have grown over 100%. We have more than doubled in assessed growth for our township. But out of the increase for 2022, about 21 million of that was residential, which I think we would expect. And the other 13 million was real property, commercial growth, vehicles, and boats, watercraft.
Say that again. What were the proportions again?
21 million was residential growth. 13 million
Was other property?
was other property, yes.
2 to 1. Okay.
2 to 1. So we're still very high in residential growth, which we continue to see. This is our projected revenue. This is based on a set amount of, and I'm going to discuss this a little more on another slide, but this is based on 30 mills only. You can see that we have two primary sources of general fund revenue: local taxes, which make up about 53.8%, and state education funding, which now makes up about 41.5%. So where in some prior years we were about 50-50, we're now seeing the shift in local taxes are having to support what we're not receiving in state funding. And you can see that clearly from these numbers. I also wanted to point out that the state funding, this is based on, once again, on the Senate version with limited hold harmless funds for our district. This is also including the same amount of transfer from our contingency fund for next year, $3,350,000, that later on in future years we are going to have to work ourselves out of drawing that money because it is limited, and we won't have that availability. And then we have a small amount of other categories for tuition, other income, interest, bus driver, transportation. We do receive a supplement for bus drivers as well.
Why is that down?
I think that will, in the end, this is the projection right now, but they have also told us they're finalizing their number. They have to wait to year end for the final routes. So we think that number is going to be adjusted somewhat. But this is, the 620,000 is the projection that we have received with the full Senate version of the budget. So we will wait and see what happens with that number. So the overall projected revenue here is $216 million. This is an increase of $23,531,852 over the current year budget, or it's a 12% increase. And as I mentioned, the local taxes here, the $116,367,000, this includes 30 mills, which I'm basing that on a mill value of $340,000 for next year, and it includes a 2% growth rate in property taxes from just growth that we would bring in an additional 2%. It also includes, for the first time, a portion of the projected revenue for the new hospital. I believe I had mentioned that before.
And you got those numbers from?
I got those numbers directly from the York County assessor and auditor. The piece that we do not know, they do not know yet, is the what we call the furniture, fixtures, and equipment. This is based on the data they have to date, which is the real property and the building values. They have to wait until those property tax returns are filed by the hospital and at the state level, and then the state sends that information to the county. So they were unable to give me any further projections on that.
And then the county bills them according to whatever the
Correct.
that updated number is that we don't have yet.
Correct. Correct. This is our projected expenditure summary based on the previous revenue. A couple of key points that we often mention is the salary and benefits for us make up now 89.4% of our total budget. We have been around 88%, and with the plan to increase the teacher pay and the other staff pay next year, that bumped us up to 89%. Operations and maintenance of the facilities is additional 6.1%. So as I've said before, those two items together, that's 95% of our total budget. And then we have the department allocations, the per pupil school allocations, that's what I call the school budgets, school resource officers, the money that's allocated for athletics, and band is pupil activity funds, and then the maintenance and gas on the buses, and then some other district level items that we budget district wide, such as graduations, things like that, strategic plan, those type of funds are in other district contingency funds. Now I'd like to go over a couple of specifics. We have shared these lists with you prior with one change. I have grouped the expenditure proposals by category. And category 1 for us is always things that we have either committed to, inflationary increases, state mandated increases, or just things that I sort of call cash out the door that I know is going to happen that we've got to account for. So that's what makes up our category 1. Our salary increases that we've discussed, our health insurance, once again, the state retirement system, we're having to pay in another 1% for all of our employees next year. Then we have our 25.5 new classroom teachers for growth. We have 3 school psychologist positions that would finish out our strategic plan to have a school psychologist in each one of our schools. And then the next section is the shifting. These are costs related to positions that we currently have that are paid out of special state revenue funds that are, you can see I have rolled up. That means they're now part of the new education funding formula. So we have to move those people to the general fund to continue those services to our students. And then we have ESSER 2 expiring in September. And we have approximately 9 positions paid out of ESSER 2 that we have to pick up. And also Title I, we have 2 positions. We continue to see, like other federal funds, a decline in Title I funding, and that's primarily positions. So we need to shift 2 positions to the general fund from Title I. And then the last grouping are more our inflationary things outside of, as I mentioned, the coverage for the 30 minutes of unencumbered teacher time. We are seeing our actual costs for substitutes increasing just because of our increase in teachers. So in looking at where we are current year, budget to actual, I feel like we need to plan for that next year. Also with the new parental leave bill, very difficult to project what that's going to mean when our teachers now would be able to have 6 weeks of paid sick leave, not against their sick leave, paid by the district.
This is not the actual sub pay increasing. This is just the
Correct.
Your numbers of subs we're going to
Correct.
need makes the line item bigger.
Correct. This is not the daily rate increasing. This is just us covering the cost for our substitutes. The next item is continuing to provide our schools the $100 per student. That's their school budget based on the new students. And then we have our normal technology, instructional, and network increases for contracts. Most of those contracts are either based on the number of students or the number of staff. And so as those things increase, those contracts increase. And then the last 2 are related to that 6% overhead cost for operating our facilities, utilities, cleaning, and insurance, and then our repairs, supplies, and contracted services for maintaining 20-plus facilities next year. So you can see the total of Category 1 is $19 million. I've deducted from that the new state funding that we would receive, a small amount of other state funding, and the new local revenue. And the new local revenue is just based on growth. So we would need 17 mills just to cover Category 1 for next year. This slide might be a little more difficult to read, but this is our Category 2, 3, and 4 items. And I'll just touch on some of these. Category 2, we are proposing to add an additional $800 to the teacher salary scale. This would bring us to the full $3,300. Category 1 had the state proposed $2,500. And I will add that since we are a district that currently pays over $40,000, or now with the 2,500, we pay over $42,500. We're not mandated to add the 2,500, but we felt like as an administration that was a Category 1 item. But we would also propose to add an additional $800. This would bring us to a starting teacher pay of $47,000, and we think that will get us back in the top 5 in the state. This dollar amount also includes adding the 26th step. We've talked about that for several years. We are really seeing districts start to add steps between the 25th step and the 30 years. We're seeing those top 5 districts in the state have started adding those steps. So we would like to add the 26th step next year to our scale.
I saw that also on the teacher retention and recruitment task force recommendation to go up to 30 steps. So maybe at some point the state will cover it, but in the meantime, we want to get ahead of it.
Right, right. Then our other items in Category 2 are related to special ed. This would be 3 special setting classroom teachers, 4 inclusion resource, and 6 special ed assistants. And I would be amiss if I didn't tell you that Dr. Maziar's original request was double this. So we had a lot of conversation. I said, give me your bare minimum. And we got down to these numbers as Category 2. The Category 2 items total $2.6 million, and that would require an additional 8 mills. So we're now at 25 mills for Category 1 and 2. As we roll into Category 3, we prioritized the request by all the principals to increase the extracurricular stipends. We also prioritized ESOL. I can tell you that the original request was for 3 ESOL teachers. Once again, I went back and said, what's the bare minimum? We put in 1 as a Category 3 item, truly the bare minimum. We've had a lot of conversations about that area as well and what the needs are. As you know, we are consolidating our alternative program for next year to its own site. We're very excited about that, but as a result, we have a request to add a mental health counselor and a special ed teacher. This is the list that changed from the previous version that we presented at the May meetings. We went back and started discussing the needs on the grand summary worksheet, as well as some of the comments that you all made and questions you all had at the last meeting. And we felt like we could support the alternative program with the 1 special ed teacher. Not ideal, but we felt like we also needed to add that 2nd educator effectiveness coach. And I shared with you at the last meeting just how important that is, and I've had further discussions with that group, and they're super excited to see this on the list because we only have 1 current educator effectiveness coach, and I believe they're projecting about 75 new teachers that would benefit from this next year. So it's going to be very difficult for her to support that many new teachers. So we did make that change from the previous version and only included 1 special ed alternative program teacher here and added this educator effectiveness coach. So Category 3 items total $429,000. That's an additional mill. So we're now at 26 for Categories 1, 2, and 3.
Just to tie that last one back to another effect, the educator effectiveness coach ties right into retention.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And from what, not my area, but from what I understand, that's so important to coach and assist those new teachers in those first couple years of the classroom and their careers.
Yeah, we've talked before about the first few years being the critical part to get teachers sort of into the groove.
Right, right. So moving into category 4, these are a lot of items that will, if they don't directly in the schools, they're going to support the schools. We have been trying over the last couple years to enhance our curriculum department because we're very slim with that support for a district our size compared to other districts in the state our size, and their curriculum support they have at the district level for their teachers. So this would be an additional curriculum coordinator for ELA for grades 6 through 12. Also, as you know, we've been trying to add a third assistant principal at our middle schools once they reached a certain level of enrollment. And so this would be an additional third assistant principal for Forest Creek Middle School because they've now met that enrollment number for next year. And then item number 3, high schools PLC testing specialist. This would be one for each high school. This has been on their request for several years. And we had a lot of discussion with the high school principals about this during their budget meetings. So we felt like this was warranted to go on the list this year. And then the next one is a curriculum coordinator for elementary for math. Then we have for special services a district social worker. We had a lot of discussion at the last meeting about what our current attendance and residency person's doing and just the workload there with our growth, what we're seeing. And then here's our second ESOL teacher in category 4. And then the next couple items are related to our department budgets. Just as we're continuing to grow, we're seeing, especially in certain areas like human resources background checks, we are just seeing that increase and we're incurring the cost there. As you recall, you had approved and we've moved forward for transportation with the new camera system. So this would be the annual licensing. And then the last couple items are some curriculum cost for software programs that honestly, I've just been moving around to different places. State special revenue is now gone. ESSER funding is now gone. Year-end transfer list, I still have part of them on the year-end transfer that you approved at the last meeting. These are the ones that I'm hoping to get in the general fund recurring versus having to continue to put them on year-end transfer. And I've lost the other sources.
They are reoccurring costs.
They are reoccurring costs.
They're not new.
Correct.
How do we pay for it and where do we pay for it?
Correct. So the total of category 4 is 1.4 million. This would be an additional 4 mills. This gets us now to 30 mills. Since the last meeting, we have provided you also, and I'm going to talk about this in a little more detail in the next slide. I provided you a category 5, which we're going to show in a little bit for your consideration. That would be an additional 4 mills. Want to touch on the millage rate and how this works now under Act 388, really for the benefit of the public. We are allowed as a local district, you as a local school board, you can only increase millage based on the consumer price index annually and the population growth for our district annually. The consumer price index this year is 8%. That is the largest I can recall seeing it, and I think that just goes to what's going on with the economy right now. Our population growth, 5.27%, so in total, you have authority to increase 13.27%. We're currently at 231.5 operating mills. You can increase the annual millage 30 mills. In addition, as I mentioned at the last meeting, there is a provision in the state law, it's called the millage look-back provision, that you can go back and recapture millage from the past 3 years. So this chart shows you our past 3 years. In 2021, we had reassessment. We recaptured in the rollback. In 21-22, we were allowed 11.1. You approved 11.1. But last year, we were allowed 21 mills. You initially approved 16 in June, and then we amended the budget in July to add the additional $300 per teacher, and you approved an additional 1 mill. So we levied an additional 17 mills, and we left 4 mills on the table last year. So per state law, we could increase 30 plus 4, we could increase 34 mills for next year. This is just a few examples of the impact on our taxpayers. Just as a reminder, none of us pay operating millage on our homes. We are to receive the difference from the state, and I will share that currently the difference between what we would receive as a school district if we were all paying on our homes versus what the state sends us is over $40 million annually short. So we would receive $40 million more in tax revenue if we were collecting on homes versus the formula of the state law as it is currently. But I wanted just to give a few examples. Non-occupied, that 6% real property, I just put in a $200,000 value. That would be about $360 a year on 30 mills or $30 per month. The commercial property is a business, their furniture, fixtures, and equipment. It would be about $630 a year or $52.50 a month. And then a vehicle, which we can all relate to, would be at $40,000 would be $72 a year or $6 a month. Just to give you a quick comparison, if you did approve the full allowable 34 mills on the 6% real property, that would be an additional $48 or $4 a month. The commercial property would be $84 a year or $7 a month. And a vehicle would be $9.60 or less than $1 a month, 80 cents a month on a $40,000 vehicle for comparison. This is a chart of our operating tax millage history. You can see that as our budget has increased, as our growth has increased, our tax millage has had to increase. Next year, as I mentioned, we would be at a minimum 261.5. I wanted to point out on here the countywide millage of 30 mills. You can see that has not changed. It has not changed way past 2018, prior to 2018. Those 30 mills, 1 mill off the top goes to York School District because they're the highest poverty district of the 4 York County districts. And then the remaining 29 mills is shared among all 4 districts based on average daily membership. We are now the largest, this is our 2nd year being the largest district in York County. So we do see normally a favorable adjustment on the final tax collection numbers because of that. We expect it is projected each month based on what we collected the prior year. And then when the county does their final tax reconciliation, normally we will see additional funding, which is a lot better than losing funding at the end of the year.
But it's small dollars, isn't it?
Small dollars, small dollars, small dollars. But you know, I don't like to see anything in the negative, so it's always good to see the positive. And once again, I'll point out 2021, you see that millage was reduced, but that was in reassessment year. And in reassessment year, by state law, we have to do a rollback on the millage calculation because we cannot benefit from the increase in assessed values, property values increasing. This is a chart that we like to show comparison with the other York school districts, just what we spend per pupil. you can see that we spend the least amount per pupil, $10,946 in 2021. This is the latest data available. We use what's called Insight data. That is where all the districts send their data to the state, and they publicly publish this. This way, we're all comparing the same pots of money in the same data. Also, the state average for this period was 11,758 was the state average. We were under the state average as well as being under the other 3 York County districts. So I think the message here that we'd like to send is that we're very efficient with our dollars and what we're able to accomplish with our dollars each year.
Leanne, you mentioned on a previous slide that it would put us at around 11.5.
Correct.
Which would still be, and this is 23 for us.
Correct.
This is 21 for everybody else. So I'm
Yes.
sure these numbers have gone up. But even
Yes.
if they had stayed the same, it would still put us
Under.
$1,000 roughly below everybody else, which is $18 million difference, for example, between us and Rock Hill,
Right,
right?
right,
And that's based
Yeah.
on their 21 numbers. I don't know what the 23 numbers are going to be.
right. Great point. That concludes our public budget presentation. We now invite any comments from the audience that would like to come up and speak. I did mention this will be posted on our website. But in summary, I'm just going to close by saying we're in challenging economic times. We understand that with continued growth, the decline in state funding. But I hope this public feels like our administration here, we're dedicated to maintaining this school district at the highest level, that to meet the needs not only of our students, but we feel like the expectations of this community have not gone down. If anything, they've gone up. And we value and appreciate the continued support of you, the school board, and our public. We do feel like that our budget plan meets the continued needs that we're presenting tonight, and we're pleased to present this to you tonight for consideration. And I believe we'll have some more discussion, and I'd like to go over that next group of items that I mentioned, our Category 5, when we get to that part of the agenda. And then we'll answer any of your questions. But I believe now we'll open it up to the public for any comments.
Is there anyone that would like to come speak and address specifically the budget at this time? No principals that want to ask for more?
You can ask, but, she's going to tell you what's your bare minimum.
That's right.
All right.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Leanne, for
Sure.
that. And we'll get back to
Okay.
more budget stuff in a few minutes. But first, we have some other agenda items. The next one listed as number 5, I believe, was the approval of minutes from May 9th and May 23rd. Let me start by asking if there are any adjustments or corrections to the May 9th meeting. If not, those will stand as approved with unanimous consent. I do want to make a comment about the May 23rd meeting. We had some discussion earlier about the minutes are absolutely correct to reflect the discussion, but there's been some new developments about the flex time, the specifics, and so if we could maybe just amend the minutes to be generic about a consistent flex time between the high schools and not put specific times and minutes, because I don't think that's etched in stone yet, and so I don't want anybody to be confused if they were to read the minutes and think, that it had been formally approved at one time or another. So if that's okay, then I would recommend that we approve the minutes with those adjustments. Is that okay? That will be approved by unanimous consent as well. And then we move to the traditional public participation. I have one card. So, Mr. Puzio, if you would like to approach the microphone, state your name and address, and then you'll have 5 minutes to address the board.
Thank you. So good evening. My name is Andrew Puzio, 206 Brookside Drive, Fort Mill, 29715. I am both a district parent and a teacher. At your last meeting on Tuesday, May 23rd, you all voted to join a lawsuit against social media companies which aims to, and I'm quoting here from Joe Burke's highlights document from the last meeting that he emails out to the district, quote, which aims to provide relief from the district's financial losses as a result of arranging outreach and education programs regarding social media harms and hiring additional mental health professionals. The lawsuit also seeks an abatement remedy to combat our youth's mental health crisis due to social media addiction. While I have my reservations about using litigation to achieve such ends, I fully agree with you in principle. I am left wondering, though, if any of you are aware of district schools' policies regarding phone usage during school time. I do not know if any of you have been in a school and observed the students between classes or at lunch. The split second the bell rings, the phones come out. Indeed, before the bell rings in classrooms where teachers have lax or non-existent phone policies. With the students' faces buried in their phones for as long as possible. The students have been waiting for that dopamine fix after all, 80 minutes, at least in the high schools. Unfortunately, even for we teachers who ban phones in our classrooms, their use inevitably seeps through. As educators and parents, we know that children tend to push boundaries. They are emboldened now, and the allure of their mobile devices is too hard for them to resist. How is it then that on the one hand you have joined this lawsuit, while on the other hand you are at least passively countenancing the universal use of the devices used to access the very social media you deem harmful to our students' mental health? How can you reconcile this with your support of the lawsuit? It would be quite easy for defense counsel to attack your motives. Why are you suing my client for monetary damages resulting from social media addiction when you yourself allow phone use in your schools? Don't the students have Chromebooks to access educational materials online? When I started teaching in my home district, the mobile device policies were very, very strict. Now we have simply waved the white flag, surrendering to our children's base desires. We are adults. We know better. We can say no. I realize, of course, that the board is not necessarily directly dictating individual schools' mobile device policies. However, with the advent of your support for this lawsuit, it is time that you step in and start. If you truly value the mental health of the children in district schools, you will have the courage to mandate that mobile device usage be banned in all district schools. There will be an outcry from certain quarters, but if we stand firm as a district, we can develop an appropriate educational environment and illustrate our commitment to our students' health and well-being. We don't serve candy with lunch because that is no good for the body. We should similarly ban the use of mobile devices district-wide because the way they are being used is no good for the soul. If you do not follow through with this, you will be telling voters, taxpayers, parents, students, teachers, and staff that your support of the lawsuit is nothing more than virtue signaling and that you are not serious about combating social media addiction. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, we have a brief staff report before we get into all the action items, starting with monthly financial impact fee updates.
So tonight in your packet, we have the monthly financial report for April 30th, 10th month in the fiscal year. Total revenues were $171,101,000 and total expenditures $149,417,000. So as we would expect, we're in a positive cash flow after tax season, what I call tax season, $21.6 million. A small amount of delinquent real estate collections, about $297,000. But we've now collected 98.6% of the local taxes budgeted, which is where you hope to be. 98%'s been collected at the end of tax season. This month, April, we receive a couple state reimbursements that come in periodically. The remaining 10% of local property tax relief for Tier 1 and the homestead exemption. You know, I like to report on vehicle tax collections. Once again, another over $1 million month, $1,154,000 in vehicle tax collections for April. And I I'm still projecting tax revenue at year end to be about 1.7 million over budget, which we discussed at the last meeting with the year end transfer number. Impact fees collected to date, we are just shy of $59 million. 58,965,000. Single family homes, 2,200. Multifamily, 1,583, for a total of 3,783 units. In May, we had 72 homes and 19 multifamily. You may have remembered at the prior meeting we reported we had already had a large day in May, the beginning of the month, but then we had another large day of 50 homes paid in one day. So that was 907,000. So we exceeded the average collections for May. Our total May collections were 1,535,000 in impact fees. So as we would expect, we're starting to see that upward trend. Comparable data, we're still about 13% less on single family and 44% less on apartments, just the 12-month rolling, as we would expect.
Starting to tick back up.
But starting to tick back up.
It was interesting to see that there were none from TGK. It was all Fort Mill and the York County. And I imagine all the Fort Mill was, or most of it, was
Elizabeth. That's what I have not looked up the addresses, but did you? Was it Elizabeth?
And all
Yeah.
of the county ones that are the multifamily, that's all over in Regent Park.
I can tell you in TGK that work has begun again on the River Falls, which is the one directly across the street from TGK Elementary. I think most of Windhaven, not all, but most of it is probably permitted already, but River Falls, which sat dormant for a while, has started to have activity again. So I think you'll see those coming soon. And then I know either tonight or maybe last night, the Planning Commission was discussing some things in TGK about the, I don't know what it's called, but the new corridor that's sort of catty-cornered from TGK Elementary where the intersection of Hubert Graham Way is, which would have
yes.
additional homes when that
Whatever
moves
happened
forward.
to the game on Dale, Dr.
Well,
Holmes missed it,
so the Game On properties have been developed as far as the,
Right.
the,
but has it been fully out like they projected?
No, it's not.
no, there's another set that's been recently cleared probably 2 months ago, so those permits I suspect will be coming in pretty soon as well.
I think those are coming.
Yeah.
And that'll be both multifamily and single family.
A lot of the multifamily's been built, but not all of it.
He must have talked to, Susan, whoever
Susan Britt,
does
Planning
TK,
Commission.
she must have conveyed that to him
recently.
within the last year.
Yeah, I mean, some have, if you drive down that way, you'll see, some of them are there now, but there's still more dirt that's been cleared and new pipes that are starting to pop up,
Right.
so.
Well, and there's also a whole nother section that's coming in off of Gardendale, going both ways. It's the Wendell property,
Yeah,
and that's
so you
fun.
give it another month or two, Wayne.
Yeah.
I think was the point.
Okay. And then I just want to give you a quick update on student nutrition now that the school year has ended. We do plan to continue the current pricing for meals. Looking at their budget for next year, we're able to do that. So just to recap on that, breakfast is $1.35. We're going to keep that $1.35 next year. Lunch for elementary students is $2.25. And then lunch for middle and high is either $2.50 or $3, depending on their meal choices. I will share that last year we served 537,000 breakfast meals. We are the largest restaurant in Fort Mill. That's when we had 20% participation. We'd like to see that continue to go up. Lunch meals, we served 1,467,819 lunches last school year. And we have an average of 48% participation. We'll continue to encourage our parents to fill out the free and reduced meal applications if they feel like they're eligible prior this summer and prior to school starting in August, and try to get that process rolling.
Do we have any, I know in previous years, especially during the pandemic, there was some summer lunch feeding programs. Do we have any of that in the normal summer?
I would be guessing.
I've not heard us talk about it, so I'm guessing not, but it's a guess. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so for summer school, where summer school exists, that's an option, but for just other students?
Correct. That's what I was going to say. I know for summer school sites. Any questions about the monthly financials, the impact fees, or student nutrition? Okay.
All right, you're still up.
I'm still up. Okay.
Now we're to the action item portion of the budget discussion, so, and some other action items as well, but do you want to take us through some other things?
I will. So, at the last board meeting, I had shared with you about the look-back provision for state millage limitations, and that we did have the 4 mills left on the table last year. And as a result of your discussion, you asked us to come back and share with you what would we consider the next priority items to add to the budget with that funding. And 4 mills, $340,000 a mill, that's $1,360,000 of additional new revenue that would come into the district. So we provided, and I think we're going to show that for everyone. Perfect. These are the items, and I will just recap that the master, what I call the master summary of all budget requests for this year. This is from the principals and the department heads, totaled over $29 million. So $29 million in request for next year. And those items, I mean, our principals and department heads do a great job of only including things that are truly needs. It's not a wish list type of list. So everything that they submit is warranted, and we wish we could do everything on the master summary. But this is what the administration feels is our Category 5. We had a lot of discussion about this. I went through and initially pulled some things based on reviewing that summary and my notes and recollection of the discussions that we had with the principals and department heads. And then when our leadership team got together, we added some additional things. We took away some things that I had put on there, and we truly, as a collaborative team, came up with these items for your consideration. And I'll just run through these right quick. The first one is shifting the school psychologist to a separate pay scale from the teacher pay scale. Our 3 York County districts have already done this, or they are doing this for next year. York, Clover, and Rock Hill are all pulling this employee group off of their teacher pay scale if they had not already. Rock Hill had already done that, and York and Clover are doing that next year, pulling them off the teacher pay scale. The second item is adding a nurse for the alternative program. This is based on a need for us moving that to a separate site, and the needs of those students in the alternative program. If we don't do this, we would have to use nursing services from another school, but that person could not be there full time. And student services feels like that is a large concern, not having someone there at that site full time. The next item is supplementing our school budgets for those students that are on free lunch. They do not pay the $30 instructional fee. If it is a reduced student, they only pay $12 of the $30. So this is the exact amount of money that our schools did not collect this school year. This covers every school based on the free and reduced students. So this would make up that difference for the schools in their school budgets for next year. The next item, next 2 items are related to special ed. One is 2 additional assistants. This is a specific request that Dr. Maziarz has because of a one-on-one need for visually impaired students. 2 coming in. The next one is that second special ed teacher for the alternative program that we originally had above, but we felt like we need to go ahead and put in the educator effectiveness coach. This would help because a lot of those students have special ed classifications. And we were, from what I understand, we're fortunate some of the teachers that we had last year or the prior years were certified in special ed and they retired. And so now we're needing to make that up for services for our students. The next one is an area that I've thought about for several years. A lot of districts allocate their school budgets on a higher amount than $100 per student. And we've just had this $100 per student. So this would increase the school budget allocations $10 per student over their current $100. So this would benefit all schools in the district. The next one is shifting our speech staff to that same new pay scale where we would put the school psychologist. And we're moving in a direction of shifting these special ed professional classifications to their own pay scale. The next one is the K-12 Social Studies Coordinator for Curriculum. This has been on their list previously as well. We do not have anyone in this arena right now for social studies. The next one is adding the assistant principal for Catawba Ridge High School. They have been one assistant principal down since we opened the doors. So they are one short now compared to Fort Mill High and Nation Ford. And then the last one is 2 additional technicians for maintenance. This has also been on their request for multiple years. So the total of these items is $1,228,000 is our Category 5 priorities. For your consideration, if you would support doing the look-back provision on the additional 4 mills, this would bring our total budget to $217,839,435.
Could you elaborate on the 362 and the 358 numbers?
Yes. So what I did is I just subtotaled to show you 1 mill. Those first 3 items equal 353,000. That's 1 mill, and then the next 3 equal 362,775. That's an additional mill. You know, I like to do them in groupings. So I gave you my groupings on the Category 5.
5A, B, and C.
Correct. It's an accounting thing. I can't help it. So,
I just took it with
yeah. No. So I am now open for questions or your discussion.
I got questions.
But we are proposing approval of a budget. Okay.
I have about 8 questions.
Okay.
9. So you may need some stakeholders to help
I
you
might
out.
need some stakeholders.
Yes. So the first one here, and so these are notes I've taken, so I'll read those out loud, and there's questions behind those. So last meeting, I had asked for clarity on the $100 per student fee. You just gave clarity again, and again, thank you for the representing of the value proposition. I think you did a good
Sure.
job with that.
And I will add, the $100 fee, I've been now, this is my 15th year with the district. It was $100 when I came to the district. So we have not increased it, I know, in at least 15 years, probably prior to that as well.
Gotcha, okay. Thank you. I was going to ask that question for how long have we been.
Yes.
The next one is, so that $10 increase, so what are the opportunities that come from that?
So the $10 increase, the schools, I call it their school budget, but it truly covers anything at their school outside of the salary and fringe costs for the positions. So they use it for classroom supplies, media center, the front office supplies that they need. They can use it for professional development for their staff. It's really anything, any cost that they incur to operate their school outside of salaries and fringe has to come from the $100 per student.
Thank you. This is the assistant principal position, so help me understand the methodology behind our AP needs. And it's a follow-up question to it, which is there a metric or guidance, students per AP? You mentioned something earlier, but I just want to get some
Right.
clarification on that. And then the follow-up is, if that position was not approved, what are the ramifications of not meeting that guidance?
Okay, I'm going to call on my friends for that one.
Yep.
Good evening. So we do not have an exact student number of when we add an additional assistant principal. So elementary, it's the same. Middle school, we've said once the student population gets to 750 now, we will add another assistant principal. But for high school, it's always been the same number because the schools have always been really close in population. So while Catawba Ridge is still a little bit lower in population than the others, we know that's where there's a lot of growth. And the important thing with that, why we think this is important for Catawba Ridge, is they still have the same amount of duties. So they might have less students, but they still have, they have the books to give out, they have instructional materials, they have PLCs to supervise, they have all the same sporting events to supervise. Catawba Ridge has less students, a couple hundred less students, but they don't have any less sports than the others. So while we do not have a set number where we automatically move to another assistant principal at the high school, because we haven't had that issue before, I think it's really important to add that because the work still has to get done. With just a little bit less students, but where the growth is, that's going to add up to where the others are.
So being proactive.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
I want to say it's being proactive in a sense, but also somewhat reactive, because the assistant principals that are there now, they might have less students, but they still have all the same duties, the same coverages for after school, which is a big thing for high school.
Understood. Thank you. Next one is regarding the district-wide technicians. How many do we have now? And can you paint a picture for me of what that day-to-day looks like? And then my response is going to be, what happens if those two, are there ramifications for if those two were not approved?
Okay, calling on my friends.
Currently, we have 26.
Microphone.
People at home
Microphone,
can't hear
please.
you.
Sorry, you got to go to the microphone.
Use your-
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, not sorry.
Good evening. Currently, we have 26. There's one per school. There's two in the high schools, though. Gives us 23, and then we have a painter, we have a locksmith, and we have a person for the district office operations center. So there's 26 maintenance techs, which are just part of the maintenance staff. The reason we're asking for this is because as we've grown to such a bigger district, over 20 schools soon to be, we haven't added anybody except the maintenance person for a particular school that we've opened. We've been running into issues where we don't have enough staff because people are getting pulled off. We have technicians that are HVAC specialists, electrical specialists, plumbing specialists. When they all have to hit a school that there's a big issue with, that school's left unoccupied. We also have the CAP that we have to run. The aquatic center doesn't have a staff person there. So that's the issue. We just can't, it runs into a problem with preventative maintenance. Sometimes we fall behind. Sometimes there's issues getting to some things in the schools that need to be done in a particular school when we don't have enough staff as far as that. Now you said what happens if we don't do this. I mean, we've always done less with more to Leanne's slide. Throughout the district, every department does less with more. We'll get through, but it's just becoming, as we become a larger district, we're seeing some strains on some of the things we're trying to accomplish. And when we added more projects to the summer, we have folks running around in the summer doing particular things and such, so it's put a strain on. But again, we'll handle what we have to, but we haven't asked.
Would these two be, I'm going to call them floaters?
Like floaters,
Floaters,
correct.
'cause I can say, and you guys correct me if you agree or disagree, but I know as we've been on school visits, not just this year, but over the years, maintenance needs seems to be a topic of conversation that comes up a lot. Just the ability to get to things quickly, with staff.
And then we have folks that might go on vacation.
Right.
We have somebody out on the staff now with workman's comp, so we have nobody else to put there. So there's already a gap there. And if you noticed, when you guys approved the lawn care folks last year, you probably did notice, I mean, we haven't had hardly any complaints. I mean, just those 2 additional staff members on that staff have created a huge positive for us,
How does
the way
this
our
ad
facilities
affect
look.
support equipment, and can you cover that,
As far as this,
like vehicles and whatnot?
well, that's going to be on the request for next summer because we are, we're behind on vehicles right now as far as for all the folks because some are breaking down. We fix them, they break down
We
again.
need to talk to Ron again.
Yeah, right. You and I will go and we'll get a deal.
Well, this is probably, I guess in my mind, I think in terms of taking care of the public's investment in our facilities. We've got millions upon millions of dollars, probably with a B instead of an M, of facilities to take care of and maintain. You know, you don't build and buy a new house and then let it fall to
Right.
disarray because you don't want to take care of the maintenance part.
We have almost 4 million square foot of space that our folks take care of, in addition to grounds and such. So
Amazon.
it's a pretty big operation as of now. I mean, it's grown so quickly, and to keep up with that growth, I've requested a couple years already. But now we're really feeling the strain.
Perfect. Thanks, Joe. I'm going to
Okay.
continue. Thank you.
Thanks.
Next question is going to be, this is, how would you frame this budget? Would this budget be more so reactive or proactive? How would you frame that?
Well, I think a little bit of both. I think that overall, if you look at the items, many of those things are reactive to things going on around us. As I mentioned about, our focus was on recruitment and retention of staff. You know, we're competing with other districts, certainly in our immediate area, but then statewide now, as young teachers coming out of college from everywhere in the country consider where they're going. So I think it's somewhat reactive to what's going on in the teaching world. I think that there's some things that are proactive in that we're trying not to get behind. And I think that goes to some of the things like Mr. Rahman was talking about, the maintenance. We're trying our best not to get behind on things. I hope you would agree that everything on these lists are absolutely needed, and many of these things, as I've said, have been on our list for a couple years, and it's just having the revenue so that we can put the items on the list for the current year. So I feel like it's a little bit of both because of the differences in some of the impact on these items. It can go both ways,
Gotcha.
which I hope is a good positive thing for us.
Perfect. Thank you. Last one for you here. So the value proposition, I think, is outstanding. So the offering, what you're proposing. So I see the value in students. I see the value in staff and teachers and administrators and supporting staff and all those types of things. I see the benefit of our parents. I see all those things. So we're asking for a millage increase. So let's share with those individuals, if you have information to share, the value for those that would be having to pay a millage increase.
Sure. So I think a couple things kind of come to mind. One is I think that we all enjoy living in a community that is somewhat prosperous. We're all enjoying the benefits of new business coming here, new retail, new services, new restaurants, new entertainment opportunities that are so close to home. Where before we may have had to go to Charlotte or Rock Hill, and we're seeing those things close to home. I think we're also all enjoying the increase in value on our property personally, our homes. we all see what the housing market is doing in Fort Mill, and we continue, as we've shared with you, we continue to hear that from especially new teachers wanting to come to our district and live in our district that cannot afford to do that. So I think protecting the value of our homes, I think all of our taxpayers, we're all seeing that benefit with the value of our homes. I think a more direct benefit that we're seeing, we all had the wonderful opportunity to participate in 3 recent graduations for our 3 high schools, and we heard about just the level of scholarship money that our students are receiving. I hope that's a direct benefit of what we're doing in our schools. I believe it is. But collectively, the 3 high schools reported out over $43 million in scholarships were offered to our graduates this year. I just think that's tremendous. And I can only recall that number going up every year. So I think that is a direct benefit from what we're proposing in the budget and going forward. And we just do not want to see just the excellence of this district and the services that were offered to our students and our families to decrease.
Great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
I've got a few comments, but before I make my comments, I'd like to make a motion that we accept the administration's recommendation for the 23-24 school general fund budget for $217,839,435, which is inclusive of a 34 mil increase.
That would be 217 million.
Is that what I said?
You said 1,000.
217 million.
I'm like, no.
I want it to be a little bit
Cannot
more
cut
than that.
much.
I jumped ahead to the 1,000.
I
So
know.
$217,839,435 with a increase of 34 mils.
I will second because I think we should at least discuss all 5 categories.
Okay.
You have discussion points?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I do. So now I'd like to
Motion and
discuss.
second. Let's discuss.
First of all, excellent job.
Thank you.
This is my 7th year on the board, and every year the presentation is spot on. I think if we were to tell you to go back and bring us a category 6, it would be filled with things that we need in this district. And I look through this category 5 priority because I know initially we were talking about the 30 mil. So I appreciate going back and looking at the category 5 priorities. But when I kind of comb through this list, it's full of things that we are going to have to add at some point in this district, right? Maybe you don't have to add an additional $10 per student, but like what you were saying is the impact to professional development. We know that there's changes coming to what we're going to have to do from a literacy perspective. That's going to cost money. So when you're looking at a $10 increase, that's what it's going to go to. And I can attest. I was a principal about 16 years ago. It was $100 a student. I always felt like I had to sort of penny pinch to make sure that I was not going over my budget year after year. Other things, the assistant principal at Catawba Ridge High School, I'm sure Mr. Wilson's in the room. He'll tell you he needed that probably, years ago, right? And I think when you discussed sort of the benefits, and I think Mr. Bodie, you did a great job of sort of highlighting the things that are on this list and the impact that they would have beyond what we've already heard in categories 1, 2, 3, and 4. I just really feel like this is an important step to continuing for our district to not be status quo, but to continue to excel in being the best district that we can be, because that's what our public expects. That's what everybody around us will expect us to do. And in order to do that, we have to make sure that we're standing behind them with a budget that satisfies those needs. So
Thank you.
that's my discussion.
Well, and $40 million loss to Act 388, we've been put in this position to fund our budget and to educate children in this district to the best that we possibly can. And our hands are tied. We're short $40 million right out of the gate before we get started because our legislators won't retract and change what they did back in 2007. So it is what it is.
Other comments?
Yeah. So, I'm personally struggling with adding the 4 additional mills, seeing as 30 is by far, the largest millage increase we've come across. I think it's all justified. I genuinely can't look at any. To Scott's point, if we were to give you a Category 6, it would all be justified. It truly would. So I really like the idea of pocketing the 4, because we could use these next year, correct?
Yes. The only thing I will mention, though, next year, just as a reminder, we are going to have the expiration of ESSER 3 funds. So we have positions in ESSER 3 that we will have to pick up in the budget next year, as well as I mentioned our dependency on that contingency fund. So I can't stand here tonight and tell you I'm sure we would have the opportunity next year to add these items because of some of those things also that will impact us next year as well.
Would we have the opportunity to, I guess those would just be rolled up in the general fund, correct?
Correct.
Okay. How many positions are in ESSER 3?
I believe there are about 6 to 8.
Say 9. Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe another 9. It was about half and half between ESSER 2 and ESSER 3.
And so, Leanne, just to clarify the answer I think you gave, the legality of adding 4 mills is available next year.
Correct.
And so, using roughly the same math, right, another 1.2 million. But what I think you're saying is that when we look at next year's priorities, even with those additional 4 mills added to whatever our cap is next year, we may not get this far down on the list because of all the other, and we don't know what's going to happen with the state budget next year and other things. So while the mills are available, we may not get far enough down that we start adding
add
these
these
items next year. Is that
correct?
Is that fair?
Correct.
Does that make sense?
And I briefly mentioned, and it just reminded me, Ms. Branning, when you mentioned about we haven't talked a lot tonight about what we've lost in hold harmless funds.
Yeah.
We started out last spring with a hold harmless amount of around $7 million. It then declined to 5-point-something million in the fall, and now in the Senate version of our allocations, it's down to 2.9 million. So the state, not only are they harming us with the deficit on the 4% property tax payments, but they're also declining our hold harmless funding. And that amount of decrease is about 12 mills right there that we've lost in hold harmless funding, which we should have received because that matches our growth. And that's been sort of my argument as I've talked to various House and Senate members, is that that number should have remained constant at the 7 million level. And we should have received the benefit of additional dollars this year because of our growth and then projections for next year.
In which case, we wouldn't be anywhere near 30 mills to get to this same list of things.
Right. Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
And at the top of Category 5, you have school psychologists.
Yes.
Which I believe an important function or an important part of their role is helping identify students who need extra services that we receive extra funding under the new formula. So, is that right?
That's correct. And I will share that we are currently, as of today, 4 school psychologists short.
And so when
we have 4
when
vacancies.
We have a school with no school psychologist, we have to just contract that out
Correct.
privately, which must cost more money.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So not only is this student-centered, this is also budget. I mean, this is helping
Yes.
not waste money.
Or not
Correct.
lose money.
Lose money having to privately
That's a great
contract.
point. It is. Yes.
What does our pool, I guess out of curiosity, not to divert the conversation, but out of curiosity, what does our pool look like for school psychologists or speech?
Yeah, the ability to get the additional resources.
What's the cool?
Calling my friends. Phone a friend.
We do have 4 current vacancies. We've had a position for school psychologist posted all year. We have not had an applicant apply since March.
Do you believe that the fact that
Will the
they
pay
are on
scale
the
help?
teacher scale?
It won't hurt, but there is a national shortage.
There's a shortage.
Okay.
But it will make us more attractive, it sounds like.
Yes.
We don't want to lose any more.
We definitely don't want to lose any more.
I think state data, there was approximately 7 vacancies this current school year across the state.
4 of them?
And we've got 4 of them?
This past school year. This past school year, we had 3.
Yeah,
Coming
but
up for
still.
this current school year, we have 4.
But 3 of 7, all in our district? Yikes.
And I will say that I don't know where everybody else stands, but I do know a neighboring district had 4 vacancies this current school year, so that was 7 between the 2 of us. Okay. They had 2 leaving this year, so they have 6. So I can only assume that the number across the state, while it's at 70 for this past school year, when they started the 2023, is only going to go way up.
Joe, were you finished, or did you have other questions? I didn't know if we cut you off. or if
It's
you were
all in my head. Yeah, I came in. I knew we had talked about it, but you, as you know, Leanne, we've met. For me to get too comfortable with the 30 mils, it took me a while. Still not completely comfortable, just because the sheer amount. Nothing to say that nothing is justified there. It's just a large amount. So to throw on 4 additional mills is something that I don't think I'm comfortable with personally yet. But it's not to say that things aren't justified. But I don't think any of those things aren't things that we could not add next go round. We're done.
Other comments, discussion? You're contemplating?
Yes.
Because if you
You want me
don't
to
contemplate,
go?
then I'm going
I
to
was
call
gonna
the question.
Let me go if you're not ready.
Go ahead.
So I hate taxes. I hate taxes as much as everybody. The thought of 30 mils is tough. I'll be honest, somewhat different than Joe's perspective. The difference between 30 and 34 is actually less tough for me because it's an additional $9 on a car. And so, I mean, the number's big. $9 more, I don't think will be felt as much as the 30, right? So the 30
Yeah.
versus the 30, they're big. They're both big numbers. You know, you mentioned the hold harmless. We've talked about Act 388. We've talked about the fee in lieu, the $10 million every year that we're not getting in fee in lieu. But I'll also go back to that slide that was up there where even with all these increases, we're $1,000 less per kid than our close, and I use Rock Hill mainly because they're the same size, right? And so that's $18 million of difference
Right.
that a district right across the river has the ability to spend and think about the things that we could do if we had an extra $18 million, right? I mean, we're still not getting all the way down the strong needs list, not a wish list. You know, we've talked before about programs that Rock Hill has that here we are, Fort Mill, and we don't have some of the same programs because we can't. And so I am as angry as anybody at the state for putting us in this position, and especially when you started your very first slide that said we used to be 50-50.
Right.
And so much more of that has been shifted. So I hate doing it, but I don't see anything on here that's not really important for the benefit of our community. And you know, the bulk of it really does fall on our small businesses in particular, and because a lot of the larger businesses do have some sort of fee in lieu, and I hate that for them. But I am so glad that in a community like ours, they still want to be here, and they're still thriving because we have the demographics to support the businesses. And so I drive down the street and I see the new restaurants and things, and I'm glad we don't have to go across the river to eat out like we used to when I was a kid, right? I mean, we can do a lot of that stuff here. So I'm glad they're thriving in spite of these challenges.
And I'd like to say, you, Joe, and you both articulated pretty much what I'm thinking, so I don't have a lot to offer, additional to offer to that. I don't want to belabor it, but yeah, I agree. I hate being in this position, and but really, we're behind in this regard, and I think
Well,
we got to step up and do it.
Our taxpayers get a great value
Get a value.
for what, I mean, I know we're asking them to spend a lot, but we're asking them to help us not let the kids suffer for what we don't want to pay. And hopefully they'll shop local and support our local businesses, and it will be a win-win. But I don't see anything on here that I could look at and say, nope, not your turn.
Agree. And I believe in our district, I believe in our staff, and I believe in our kids. And this is the only way that we have to emphasize that and to reward that, so.
So I believe we have a motion and a second to adopt a budget as proposed for $217,839,435, which is an increase of 34 mills. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
That motion does carry,
Thank you.
and you've got your work cut out for you now to get all these positions staffed and get all these things in order for
Tomorrow morning.
for an excellent next
We're
year.
on it.
Okay, we do
Thank
have
you.
other action items. We're not done. We've got a couple
You're still here.
policies. Yep, we've got a couple
Okay.
policies.
Yes.
We did first readings of these last time.
Correct. So the first one is a modification on a current policy, DID inventories. We are proposing to update the title to inventory/fixed assets. This is related to a new government accounting standards implementation guide that has to do with bulk purchases. The current threshold that we use for when an asset or a new purchase needs to be depreciated, and I know this is all a lot of accounting talk, is $5,000, but now the GASB has said that we need to consider items purchased in bulk, and these things are primarily technology purchases like Chromebooks, iPads, could be kitchen equipment, those type of things. If you buy it all at one time, and we want to use the threshold of $750,000, then we would have to set that up on our accounting system and depreciate it, instead of just expensing it all in 1 year. So this is an update to this policy. We have discussed the $750,000 with our audit firm, and they have concurred that that is an acceptable dollar level. I also am proposing a change. The first paragraph previously said the superintendent's responsible for setting up a system to maintain an accurate inventory of these things. I changed it to my position, the associate superintendent. I'm gonna give him a break on that. And then the second one is will be the duty of the director of finance to ensure that inventories are recorded systematically and accurately. This gives some separation of duties between my position and Elizabeth Robinson, who's our director of finance position. So that's the reason for those changes on this policy.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the recommendation of the administration to the updates in language for policy DID, inventories and fixed assets.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve board policy DID. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries.
Thank you. And
The
this,
administrative rule does not require approval by the board.
correct. The next policy would be new. This is policy DGD, credit card use. This is a recommended policy by the South Carolina School Boards Association. We currently have an internal policy manual that all employees that are issued a district credit card have to read, go through training, sign off, but we have not previously had a board policy. This is now a recommended board policy. This is the recommended wording from the School Boards Association. And the only thing that we have edited is just the positions that will be responsible. So the superintendent will determine which staff members will be issued or provided use of district credit cards, and the associate superintendent of finance and operations will establish a process consistent with board policy to regulate the use of credit cards. And one of the main reasons I believe that they're recommending this, it also has wording related to discipline, that if we have any violations of this policy by a staff member, that it will be subject to disciplinary action.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the recommendation of the administration for Board Policy DGD, credit card use.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for the approval of policy DGD, credit card use. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That
Thank you.
motion carries. All right, we still got a couple more, but Ms. Lordo's off the hook. Mr. Young?
Told her she gets to sit down now.
Right.
All right, so this is the second reading of policy KFD, clear bag use at district events. This is a policy that was recommended by the Department of Homeland Security, and really it's for the purpose of providing a safe and secure environment at our larger district events. It does allow one large clear bag plus a small clutch bag per person. Exceptions would be made for those with necessary medical items or media credentials. And as you can see on the graphic that Mr. Burke made, it shows what is and is not allowed, and we would advertise this, the policy this way. So many of our surrounding districts have this policy already in place or are approving these, and would love to have this policy in Fort Mill School District as well.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the recommendation of the administration for policy KFD, clear bag use at district events.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for policy KFD, clear bag use at district events. Is there any discussion? I would just add the communication around this is so critical, and the clarity of which events it applies to, right? Does it apply to all events that are not at a stadium, but they're on a field somewhere? Does it, you know, all of those things, and making sure that we let our parents and our students, especially this at the beginning of school, you know
Yes, ma'am.
what's to be expected.
And consistent enforcement.
And consistent across schools, consistent
Absolutely.
enforcement, et cetera. All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right.
Thank you.
Last but not least, we have the approval for some board policies around retirement.
Good evening. At last board meeting, Gray Young helped me out in short notice. I apologize for not being here, but tonight I'm here requesting the approval to updates to our existing policy, GCQE, retirement of professional staff, and also GDQC, retirement of support staff. The recommendations that you've been provided in your packet are actually a result of the model policies recommended by the School Boards Association. And so, again, both of these policies are identical, of course, one pertaining to our professional versus support staff, but the changes, or I guess the recommendations or the updates, basically are indicating that any staff member who is a participant of the South Carolina Retirement System or the state ORP, optional retirement plan, that they should seek their eligibility confirmation and consult through PEBA's website. So that was one of the highlighted areas. Additionally, the update also indicates that a staff member should notify the board, HR, or the superintendent in writing of his or her intent to retire as soon as possible, but not later than March 15th of the year in which the individual plans to retire. And I think this is a great addition or an update because of staff shortages in all areas. The sooner we're made aware, the better we're able to prepare for replacing those folks. Also, for an eligible staff member who wishes to retire during the course of a school year, which we do have this happen, that they would need to continue to adhere to the current state statutes at the time of retirement, which basically that means that they must separate employment for at least 30 days before they may be reconsidered for rehire if they wish to return as a working retiree. And also, the board must approve the employment of all state retirees, whether recommended to fill a certified or support position. So the employment is an at-will agreement, and it's only by year to year. So both of these, I guess, policies, we are recommending the same identical updates to them, again, to reflect the recommended model policies for our state.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the recommendation of the administration for the updates to policy GCQE, retirement of professional staff.
Second.
Motion is second for, are you just doing GCQE one at a time? Okay. For policy GCQE, retirement of professional staff. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the recommendation of the administration for the updates to policy GDQC, retirement of support staff.
Second.
Motion is second to approve policy GDQC, retirement of support staff. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries.
Thank you.
And I believe that brings us to you for our last meeting of the scheduled meeting of the school year. Not that things won't come up and we might need a special call over the summer, who knows, but this is intended to be our last time completely together.
Can I
For a
make a
while.
few comments
Yeah.
before I get to the, I want to, first of all, to the board, and I'll talk about everybody here in a second. I want to commend you on the way you handle yourself tonight. I can think of two things that are hard for boards to do, and that's redraw attendance area. That's got to be number one. Budget's always a struggle because you're talking about raising people's taxes. I could say calendar, but really people get over calendar. You know that's tough enough, but they'll go on. I think the way you handle yourself, particularly the new board members, Joe and Lippy, the others have been down this path before. I appreciate y'all's professionalism and conveying your thoughts. I think that's the way the civility that you show, I think, is a model to a lot of governing bodies that are out there operating less civil than you do. So I want to congratulate you and thank you for that. I do think we find ourselves, and this is for the public and our staff and our board, I do think we find ourselves in a somewhat of a dilemma. We're a victim of our own success. You know, yeah, we could not strive to be the highest paying district. We could not strive to have quality programs. We could go back to 17 mills or whatever the bottom line mills was. We could do it. However, I think there'd be such a backlash from our community because they come here expecting excellence from the schools. So we are a victim of that. We do well. I mean, I have people I grew up with who are old Fort Mill folks, and you know they're the ones that have seen their taxes go up through the years more than anybody, and they'll look at me jokingly and say, well, and I'll say, well, you enjoy the benefits of high property values, quality of life issues here in this area below Charlotte. Do you want us to mess it up? You know, I mean, of course they say no, but I mean, we are truly a victim of our own success, and I hope the public can understand that. I think they're evaluating us by moving in here, continuing to move in here. I think if we were going against the will of the people, I believe we would know it. So I think we get. And our output results are amazing. Our people do a tremendous job to the staff. this year. The last 2 years have been challenging, but y'all, look at our test scores. We improved so much from, I was going to tell you this later, board members, we improved so much from last year to this year after the first COVID year back on our test scores. We've done a deep dive. Mike and others and Matt have looked already. We're going to improve even more next year. They're not public yet, but so the job's we're delivering to the public a quality school system, and you saw compared to the other 3 districts in York County at a lesser output on our end. So, it's kind of apologizing for doing what we're doing well. I mean, I feel for these people up here that have to deal with the tax issues, but I don't know any other way to do it, and I don't think we turn back. I think we continue to stay the course and continue to deliver to the students. They're the real winners, I believe. But I thank every board member for putting themselves out there, and I know you're going to go back to your constituents and you're going to get pats on the back or you're going to get fussed at. But at least there's a reason we're making these decisions, and I think it's all about the quality of this school district. So, thank you. I'll say that. All right, now back to the mundane part. The calendar events, Monday, the Tech Dowling Memorial Golf Tournament, so I hope many of you are playing in that. Then we get into the July 4th holiday, Monday, and then the 4th is on a Tuesday. Then we crank back up in August, and we may have another board meeting in there, as Christy said. We'll see how that goes as far as the state level is concerned. But right now, we have none scheduled other than we get to the August the 8th. I think we can make it to then. Then we have the administrative in-service on the 9th at the Dairy Barn. A lot of these aren't public events, but it gives you an idea of how August heats back up. Then teacher induction programs on the 10th. Teachers return on the 14th. We have the Engage to Learn program conference where we do Teacher of the Year on the 15th. So that'll be a lot of fun at Catawba Ridge High School. Then the first day for students on the 21st. Remember, this year we'll come back. Rock Hill and Fort Mill will be starting about the same schedule. Clover and York, however, will be starting a little ahead of us. But I think we finish before they do because we don't take the breaks during the year. But it'll be a little different when we come back in August. But Rock Hill and Fort Mill will look very similar. Then there's the board meeting on the 22nd, and then the School Boards Association and the School Law Conference on the 26th and 27th in Greenville. Am I missing any other dates that beg to be mentioned?
I was looking on my calendar. I know this year the schools are not a part of the State of the Community Breakfast, but that is occurring on the 15th. I know we've been invited to participate in the event, but you're not scheduled, or the schools are not an update that will be provided, as I understand
it's
it.
a county event. It's not just Fort Mill.
Right.
So it's a real
Broader
different
community, yep.
twist to it this year.
And then you didn't mention it, but I believe a lot of the principals will have the opportunity to attend a conference with some special speakers.
Yes. And our own Ms. Spears was responsible for getting, it's public, isn't it?
I assume so, I don't know.
Sully Sullenberg is going to be there. Berger,
That's one of the,
Here's a
one of the
victim
fe-
of
one of the
that. She
feature-
floated
one
in
of
the
feature
Hudson one
speakers,
day.
so, yeah.
So that'll be real interesting. And also, pleased to announce, I've talked with Ellen Weaver. She's going to be at our administrative in-service and help us with our welcome. So that'll be, of course, that's just the principals, not the public. But so anyway, those are some of the things in the summer. Any questions about the schedule? And the attendance winners, did I get my order here? I'm sorry. I should have done enrollment.
You're right.
I'm still
Enrollment
good.
update.
Enrollment. Well, if you look, this is the 180th day, the last day of school. We ended up at 18,205. I believe if you put the 54 graduates in there for mid-year, I don't believe they're in there. That'll make it 18,250, like Anthony, I told you we'd try to get to. We didn't want to waste any effort, so we barely made it, But that's, and I think we're about 2,000 ahead of the second largest school district in York County. So, but our attendance winners was for the May, Fort Mill High School teacher attendance 94.6, Forest Creek Middle 95.17, and Sugar Creek Elementary with a district winner at 96.419. That's pretty high for the last month of school.
Incredible.
And that's the enrollment update. And over the summers when they start coming in, and I'll try to send you some numbers as we go through the summer. I think we projected how many new ones, 680 or so? Now, they won't call, she'll be there in August, but, okay.
Well, it's not
another
a fair
400 or
question
500.
because you guys may not know, but does anybody have any idea how kindergarten numbers are coming in? Is that, I know that's always the one
Peter's
that's
not here.
that's the
Peter
biggest
would know.
wild card, right? So,
A little bit lower than we expected.
okay. But it's early.
Summer.
Yep,
Right.
yep. How many houses did we get permits for? So they're all gonna have young kids, right? Okay. All right. Well, I think with that, we are in need of an executive session to discuss personnel recommendations, contractual issues, and legal issues. And so with that, I'll entertain a motion to go into executive session.
Motion to go into executive session.
We are in executive session. Thank you all so much for coming. Have a wonderful summer.